Billionaire finds quadruplets crying outside his mansion on Christmas Eve night, and when he approaches, he's paralyzed upon realizing they are identical to him. The soft hum of Ethan Blackwood's Aston Martin broke the silence of Christmas Eve. Snowflakes danced in the headlights as he guided the car up the long driveway of his mansion. The dashboard clock read 11:45 p.m. Another lonely Christmas was approaching. At 38, Ethan had achieved more than most men could in a lifetime, CEO of one of the largest pharmaceutical companies in the world, a billionaire before 35, and owner of a mansion that resembled a modern-day palace. He had everything money could buy except for the one thing he secretly longed for, a family. He parked the car inside, loosening his silk tie. The silence of the night was suddenly broken by a sound that made Ethan freeze in his seat. Crying. A baby's cry. "What the hell?" he murmured, stepping out of the car. The sound grew louder as he approached the main entrance. His hesitant steps left marks in the fresh snow. Ethan's heart raced, a mix of curiosity and apprehension taking hold. There, sheltered by a makeshift awning, was a large basket. The crying came from inside. Ethan stopped, his mind racing with possibilities. A cruel prank, a trap by the press, or something more impossible. With trembling hands, he pulled back the thermal blankets protecting the basket's contents. The world stopped. 4 pairs of eyes stared back at him. Ethan staggered, almost falling into the snow. His mind screamed that it was impossible, but his eyes couldn't deny what they saw. 4 babies. Identical. And not just to each other, identical to him. The same chubby cheeks, the same upturned nose, the same piercing blue eyes he saw in the mirror every morning. It was like looking at 4 miniature versions of himself. "My God," he whispered, his voice barely audible over the baby's cries. With fingers numb from shock and cold, Ethan picked up an envelope attached to the basket. His name was written in elegant handwriting that made his stomach twist. He knew that handwriting. Claire. A flood of memories hit him. A conference in Zurich, a year ago. A stunning woman with an even more impressive mind. 7 days of intense passion that felt like something out of a movie. And then... nothing. She vanished like smoke, leaving only the memory of her perfume and a void Ethan tried to fill with work in the following months. One of the babies cried out, sharper than the others, pulling him back to the present. Ethan looked at the quadruplets, then at the letter in his hands, then back at the babies. The reality of the situation began to seep into his stunned mind. "This can't be," he murmured, but he knew he was lying to himself. The resemblance was undeniable. These were his children with Claire. Almost automatically, Ethan picked up the basket. The weight of 4 lives in his hands seemed much greater than it should. He stepped into the mansion, the warmth inside contrasting with the chill that had settled in his core. He placed the basket on the living room's coffee table, an Italian designer piece that cost more than many cars. Now it served as an improvised cradle for 4 babies, looking at him with a mix of curiosity and apprehension. Ethan collapsed onto the sofa, his eyes fixed on the tiny faces that were a mirror of his own. 1,000 questions raced through his mind. How was this possible? Why hadn't Claire told him? Where was she now? With trembling hands, he opened the envelope. The faint perfume emanating from the paper made his heart tighten. Claire, always Claire. Before he could start reading, one of the babies let out a soft whimper. Ethan looked at the basket just in time to see tiny arms reaching out to him. Without thinking, he offered his finger, which the baby gripped with surprising strength. In that moment, something changed inside Ethan Blackwood. Fear was still there, confusion, even a hint of anger. But above all that, a new and overwhelming feeling took over, connection, a deep and instant bond with these 4 little lives that somehow were part of him. "It's all right," he whispered, his voice rough with emotion. "Daddy's here." The words came naturally, surprising even him. Daddy, a word he never imagined he'd use, let alone 4 times at once. The baby's cries softened, as if they understood and felt safe with his words. Ethan found himself smiling, despite the surreal situation. His gaze returned to the letter in his hands. He knew he would find answers there, but he also feared what he might discover. With a deep breath, he began to read, aware that every word could change his life forever. As the snow fell gently outside, marking the start of a Christmas like no other, Ethan Blackwood prepared to read what would transform his world. 4 pairs of eyes, perfect reflections of his own, watched him closely, as if they knew their future was about to be decided. The mansion, once a symbol of his solitude and material success, now seemed too small to contain the magnitude of what was happening. In a matter of minutes, Ethan had gone from a lonely billionaire to a father of quadruplets. With his heart racing and mind whirling, he unfolded the letter, ready to dive into Claire's explanations and face whatever fate had in store for him and his newly discovered children. The night that changed everything was only beginning, and Ethan Blackwood knew that, regardless of what the letter revealed, his life would never be the same again. With trembling hands, Ethan unfolded the letter. Claire's faint, nearly forgotten perfume rose from the paper, instantly transporting him back to that week in Zurich. He took a deep breath and began to read. Dear Ethan, if you're reading this, it means I didn't have the strength to do it in person. And it also means you've just met our children. Ethan choked, his eyes involuntarily drifting toward the basket where 4 pairs of curious blue eyes stared back at him. Our children. The words echoed in his mind, both impossible and undeniable. I know you must be shocked, confused, and probably angry. You have every right to feel that way. But before anything else, I need you to know keeping this a secret was the hardest decision I've ever made. The billionaire felt a wave of conflicting emotions. Anger, yes. Confusion, definitely. But also an overwhelming curiosity to understand why. Claire then revealed the unthinkable. Weeks after leaving him in Zurich, she not only discovered she was pregnant, but also received a devastating diagnosis, a rare, aggressive cancer. The doctors were clear, Ethan. They said I needed to start treatment immediately, that our pregnancy made everything more complicated. They recommended termination. Ethan's heart clenched. He could imagine the fear, the anguish Claire must have felt. But I couldn't, Ethan, I couldn't give them up. Our little miracles, 4 hearts beating inside me. How could I choose between my life and theirs? Tears began to blur Ethan's vision. He blinked rapidly, eager to keep reading, to understand. Claire described her solitary struggle, carrying the pregnancy to term while fighting the disease consuming her. Each paragraph was an emotional roller coaster. The joy of feeling the babies grow, the fear of not living to see them born, the guilt of not telling Ethan. You're probably wondering why I didn't come to you. The truth is I was afraid. Afraid of giving you a burden you never asked for. Afraid you'd ask me to choose between the babies and treatment. Afraid I wouldn't be strong enough to refuse if you did. Ethan felt a stab of anger mixed with deep pain. How could she think he wouldn't want to know? How could she go through all this alone? But then, remembering the life he led, the man he was before that night, he began to understand Claire's fears. The letter went on, detailing the miraculous birth of the quadruplets, 4 healthy boys, against all odds. They're perfect, Ethan, each one of them. And they look so much like you that sometimes it hurts to look at them. Gabriel, the oldest by 2 minutes, has your smile. Raphael, the second, has your determined gaze. Miguel, the third, has your calm. And Daniel, the youngest, has your insatiable curiosity. Ethan looked at the basket, trying to identify each boy from Claire's descriptions. It was surreal to think that these tiny beings had names, personalities, that they were part of him. Claire then revealed the harsh reality. Her time was running out. The cancer, temporarily held at bay during the pregnancy, was now advancing rapidly. The doctors give me weeks, Ethan. Weeks to say goodbye to 4 lives that have barely begun. That's why I'm doing this now. They need you. Ethan's heart felt like it might burst. It wasn't just about him discovering he was a father. It was about 4 babies on the brink of losing their mother. I know it's a lot to ask, maybe more than I have the right to. Your life is complicated, Ethan, I know that. But you're the only family they have now. And deep down, I know you'll be a wonderful father. Ethan let out a muffled sob. Father. The word never felt so terrifying and, at the same time, so right. The last lines of the letter were both a desperate plea and one filled with hope. Please, Ethan, take care of them. Love them as I know you can. Give them the family I always dreamed of. Tell them about me, about how we met, about how in 1 week you changed my life forever. And maybe, one day, you can forgive me for not sharing this with you sooner. Know that despite everything, those days in Zurich were the happiest of my life. You gave me purpose when I needed it most, and now you've given me 4 reasons to fight until the end. Love them, Ethan. Love them for both of us. With all my love, now and always, Claire. Ethan let the letter fall from his trembling hands. Tears streamed freely down his face, a mix of sadness, anger, fear, and, surprisingly, love. He moved closer to the basket, looking at the babies, his sons, with new eyes. They were no longer just 4 abandoned infants on his doorstep. They were Gabriel, Raphael, Miguel, and Daniel. They were parts of Claire. They were parts of him. One of the babies, Gabriel perhaps, yawned, reaching out a tiny hand toward him. Without hesitation, Ethan took it, marveling at the smallness and strength of those fingers. In that moment, something fundamentally changed within Ethan Blackwood. Fear was still there, confusion too, and even a twinge of anger at Claire's secret. But above all, an overwhelming and unconditional love prevailed. He didn't know how to be a father, let alone to 4 babies. He didn't know how he'd explain this to the world or keep his life on track. But one thing he knew for sure. He would do everything in his power to honor Claire's last wish and be the father these 4 little lives deserved. "We'll face this together, little ones," he whispered, his voice thick with emotion. "Daddy's here now, and I'm not going anywhere." One of the baby's soft cries broke the silence, soon followed by the others. Ethan laughed nervously, realizing that his life as a single billionaire had just taken a drastic turn. As he prepared for the first of many sleepless nights, Ethan knew the road ahead would be challenging, but for the first time in years, he no longer felt alone. He had a family now, and he would do anything to honor Claire's love and sacrifice. Outside, the snow continued to fall, marking the start of a new chapter in Ethan Blackwood's life, a chapter filled with diapers, bottles, and unimaginable challenges, but also a chapter overflowing with love, purpose, and finally, the family he never knew he wanted until that moment. Ethan sank into the sofa, Claire's letter still clutched in his hands. His eyes drifted to the quadruplets sleeping in their makeshift cradle. How could 1 week, a year ago, have so drastically altered the course of his life? Closing his eyes, he allowed himself to return to those days in Zurich. The lobby of the luxury hotel buzzed with the elite of the pharmaceutical world. Ethan adjusted his tie, preparing for another round of networking. That's when he saw her. Claire Laurent stood out in the crowd, not because of her appearance, though she was stunning in her navy blue dress, but because of the intensity in her eyes as she passionately debated with a group of scientists. Intrigued, Ethan approached, catching fragments of the conversation. Claire was fiercely defending a new approach to treating rare diseases. Her eloquence and knowledge were captivating. "Excuse me," Ethan interrupted. "I couldn't help but overhear. Your theory is fascinating." Claire turned, her brown eyes meeting Ethan's. There was a moment of mutual recognition, an instant spark. "Mr. Blackwood," she smiled, extending her hand. "Claire Laurent. I've heard a lot about you." "All true, I hope," Ethan joked, feeling strangely nervous. "Depends," Claire replied with a mischievous glint in her eye. "Is it true you're a ruthless genius in business but a disaster in the kitchen?" Ethan laughed, surprised and charmed by her candor. "Guilty on both counts, but how—" "I have my sources," Claire winked. "How about we continue this conversation at the bar? I promise not to judge if you order something non-alcoholic." Hours flew by. What began as a discussion on medical advancements turned into a deep conversation about life, dreams, and purpose. Ethan found himself sharing things he'd never told anyone, about the pressure of running a pharmaceutical empire, about the loneliness at the top. Claire, in turn, spoke of her passion for making a difference, how she chose medicine not for prestige, but for the possibility of saving lives. "You know," she said, swirling her wineglass. Sometimes I wonder if we're really doing enough, if all this money and power is truly reaching those who need it most. Ethan felt challenged and inspired. What do you suggest? Claire's eyes sparkled. A partnership, your influence, my research, influence. We could revolutionize the treatment of rare diseases. The rest of the week was a whirlwind, days filled with meetings and presentations during which Ethan constantly found himself searching for Claire in the crowd, nights spent in long conversations, planning a future that seemed bright and full of possibilities. On the third night, under the stars on the hotel's terrace, Ethan leaned in and kissed her. It felt as if the world had stopped. Claire kissed him back with equal passion, and in that moment, Ethan knew something extraordinary was happening. The following days were an intoxicating mix of work and romance. Ethan and Claire were inseparable, whether discussing business strategies or exploring Zurich hand in hand. I've never met anyone like you, Ethan confessed on their last night together as they danced slowly in his hotel room. You make me want to be a better person, Claire. Claire looked at him with an intensity that made him shiver. You already are amazing, Ethan. You just need to believe it. They made love with a passion bordering on desperation, as if both sensed that time was slipping through their fingers. The next morning, Ethan woke up alone. In Claire's place, there was only a note. Ethan, what we had this week was more than I ever dreamed possible. You awakened something in me I thought long dormant. But there are things in my life I must resolve before I can give my heart completely to someone. Please understand. This isn't goodbye. It's see you later. With love, Claire. Ethan reread the note dozens of times, trying to understand. He tried calling Claire, but her number was disconnected. He sent emails that bounced back. It was as if she had vanished into thin air. Weeks turned into months. Ethan buried himself in work, trying to fill the void Claire left behind. He initiated research projects on rare diseases, honoring the vision they shared, hoping that somehow it would bring her back. But Claire remained a mystery, until that Christmas Eve night, a year later, when 4 tiny miracles appeared at his door. Ethan opened his eyes, returning to the present. The babies still slept peacefully. Gabriel, Raphael, Miguel, and Daniel, products of that magical week in Zurich. Now, Claire's words in her final letter made sense. The urgency in her eyes that last night. The goodbye kiss that felt like it would last an eternity. Did she already know? Suspect the pregnancy? The cancer? Ethan felt a pang of regret. If he had searched harder, insisted on finding her. But no, Claire made her choice. A choice based on love, for him and for the babies she carried. Looking at the quadruplets, Ethan saw not just his own reflection, but Claire's as well. Her strength, her passion, her determination. They were living proof of the intense love they shared that week in Zurich. Thank you, Claire, Ethan whispered, a tear sliding down his cheek. For these incredible gifts, I promise I will love them and protect them with every fiber of my being. One of the babies, Daniel maybe, shifted in his sleep, letting out a tiny sigh. Ethan smiled, feeling a wave of love and protection wash over him. That week in Zurich had only been the beginning. Now, a new journey lay ahead. A journey of parenthood, discovery, and unconditional love. Ethan Blackwood, the once lonely billionaire, had been transformed. And as the snow continued to fall outside, he made a silent promise to Claire and to his children. From that moment on, each day would be lived with the same love and intensity as that magical week a year ago. The future was uncertain, but one thing was clear. Ethan would never be alone again. And with that certainty, he prepared to face the first of many challenges as a father of quadruplets. The sharp cry of one of the babies shattered Ethan's thoughts. In seconds, the other 3 joined in chorus, filling the mansion with a sound he never imagined hearing there. Okay, Ethan murmured, rushing to them. What do you need? Food? A clean diaper? He looked in panic at the 4 red crying faces. Reality hit him like a train. He had no idea what to do. With trembling hands, Ethan grabbed his phone and dialed his personal assistant's number. Sarah? It's Ethan. I need help. Now. Half an hour later, the once silent mansion was bustling with activity. Sarah arrived with an emergency team, a pediatrician, 2 nurses, and an assistant loaded with baby supplies. Dr. Amelia Chen, a renowned pediatrician, immediately took charge of the situation. "Mr. Blackwood, we need to run thorough exams on the babies. Meanwhile, we'll need a suitable space for them. Any guest room we can convert into a temporary nursery?" Ethan nodded, still dazed. "The guest room upstairs. It's spacious and—" "Perfect," Dr. Chen interrupted. "Sarah, can you arrange that?" Sarah, ever efficient, was already on the phone, ordering cribs, changing tables, and all the necessary equipment for a state-of-the-art nursery. The following hours were a blur to Ethan. He watched, fascinated and terrified, as Dr. Chen examined each baby meticulously. "They're surprisingly healthy, considering the circumstances," she finally announced. "A bit underweight, but nothing alarming. We'll need strict follow-up in the coming weeks." Ethan let out a breath he didn't know he'd been holding. "And they really are?" Dr. Chen smiled kindly. "Yours, without a doubt. The resemblance is incredible, but we can run paternity tests to confirm if you'd like." Ethan shook his head. He needed no tests. He knew deep in his heart these were his children. As the night wore on, the mansion transformed. The guest room, once elegant but impersonal, was now a cozy nursery. 4 identical cribs, a stocked changing table, and a comfortable armchair for feeding filled the space. Ethan watched, amazed, as the nurses skillfully changed diapers and prepared bottles. "Mr. Blackwood," one of the nurses called, "would you like to try feeding one of them?" With a mix of fear and anticipation, Ethan settled into the armchair. The nurse gently placed Gabriel, or was it Miguel's, in his arms, showing him how to hold the bottle. The moment the baby began to suck eagerly, his blue eyes fixed on Ethan's, was transformative. A wave of love and protection swept over him so strongly he felt tears in his eyes. "Hello, little one," he whispered. "Daddy's here." Hours passed in an endless cycle of feeding, diaper changes, and attempts to lull the babies to sleep. Determined to be involved, Ethan observed and learned from the nurses, his clumsy hands becoming more confident with each diaper change. Around 3 a.m., with the quadruplets finally asleep, Ethan collapsed into the nursery's armchair. His expensive suit was stained with milk and other fluids he preferred not to identify. He was exhausted, but more alive than he'd felt in years. Sarah entered quietly, offering him a cup of coffee. "Boss, we have some situations to address." Ethan raised an eyebrow, taking a welcome sip of coffee. "First, the press. Someone noticed the commotion here and rumors are circulating. Second, the company's board is demanding an emergency meeting. And third, well, your private jet is ready to depart for Zurich in 2 hours, as planned for your Christmas vacation." Ethan looked at the cribs where his children slept peacefully, then back at Sarah. He made an instant decision. Cancel everything. The vacation, the meeting, all of it, and prepare a statement for the press. We're going to control the narrative. Sarah seemed surprised but nodded. "What should I say?" Ethan took a deep breath. The truth. That Ethan Blackwood is the father of quadruplets, that he's taking time off to devote himself to his new family, and that he requests privacy at this time. As Sarah left to carry out his orders, Ethan stood approaching the cribs. He looked at each baby, memorizing their almost identical features, searching for the small differences Claire had mentioned in her letter. "This won't be easy," he murmured to the sleeping infants. "I'll make mistakes, probably a lot of them. But I promise I'll love you with everything I have. We'll learn together, okay?" As if in response, Daniel, the smallest, opened his eyes briefly, letting out a yawn before drifting back to sleep. Ethan smiled, feeling a peace he'd never experienced before. The next weeks, months, and years would be an immense challenge. His life had changed irrevocably in a matter of hours. But there's in that improvised nursery, watching his 4 children, Ethan Blackwood knew he was exactly where he needed to be. The corporate empire, the meetings, the million-dollar deals, all of it could wait. Now he had a new purpose. 4 of them, actually. And as the sun began to rise, marking the end of the first 24 hours of his new life, Ethan made a silent promise to Claire, to himself, and most importantly, to Gabriel, Raphael, Miguel, and Daniel. "We're in this together, little ones." And it's going to be the greatest adventure of our lives. At barely dawn, Ethan, with dark circles under his eyes and disheveled hair, convened an emergency meeting in his study. Sarah, his faithful assistant, Dr. Chen, the pediatrician, and Johnson, his head of security, looked at him with a mixture of concern and curiosity. "Ladies and gentlemen," Ethan began, his voice hoarse with fatigue, "our mission is to turn this mansion into a fortress for babies without the outside world catching on. We need to do this fast, discreetly, and perfectly." Sarah spoke first. "Boss, I've cancelled all your appointments for the next 2 weeks. The official excuse is a family emergency." Ethan nodded, grateful. "Excellent. Johnson, I need you to tighten security. No one comes in or out without my express permission, and we need a system to filter deliveries. We'll need lots of baby supplies." Johnson, normally stoic, couldn't hide his surprise. "Sir, should I assume we're now protecting not just you but 4 heirs?" "Exactly," Ethan confirmed. "Dr. Chen, I need you to assemble a trusted medical team. Pediatricians, nurses, anything 4 newborns might need." The pediatrician nodded, already making notes. "I'll personally select each team member and ensure they sign strict confidentiality agreements." "Excellent," Ethan sighed, running a hand through his hair. "Sarah, our toughest task. We need nannies, experienced professionals, discreet, ready to move in immediately." Sarah bit her lip, thinking, "I can contact a specialized agency that provides staff for high-profile families. They have rigorous background checks." The following hours were a whirlwind of silent activity. The mansion, once a monument to Ethan's solitude, was becoming a high-tech hideout for babies. The guest room next to the improvised nursery was quickly converted into a small pediatric clinic. State-of-the-art medical equipment arrived in unmarked trucks, always under the cover of night. Johnson coordinated the installation of new security systems, cameras everywhere, motion sensors, and a control room that would make the CIA jealous. On the 3rd day, the first nannies arrived. Ethan interviewed them personally, looking not just for experience, but for genuine love for children. He selected 4, 1 for each baby, plus 2 more as backup. Marie, the head nanny, a middle-aged woman with kind eyes and steady hands, quickly became indispensable. She organized schedules, trained the staff, and most importantly, taught Ethan the basics of baby care. "Mr. Blackwood," she said on her second night, finding Ethan stumbling down the hallway from exhaustion, "you need to rest. You won't be able to care for them if you don't care for yourself." Ethan smiled wearily. "Thanks, Marie. But every moment with them is precious. I've already lost so much time." Marie nodded understandingly. "I understand. But remember, this is a marathon, not a sprint." As days passed, a new routine emerged. Ethan split his time between conference calls with the board, always with the sound muted and a false background to hide the nursery, and precious moments with his children. He learned to distinguish their cries. Gabriel was the most demanding, always wanting attention. Raphael was calmer, happy to observe the world around him. Miguel was the lightest sleeper, waking at the slightest noise. And Daniel, the smallest, seemed to have a 6th sense for Ethan's presence, always calming in his arms. Challenges were constant. One afternoon, during an important video call, Daniel started crying in Ethan's arms, off camera. With a swift move, Ethan adjusted the camera angle and continued the meeting as if nothing happened, one hand holding his son, the other gesturing over financial charts. Maintaining secrecy was a daily battle. Suppliers questioned the massive orders of diapers and formula. Curious neighbors noticed the increase in car activity. The press, hungry for gossip about the solitary billionaire, began sniffing around. Sarah worked tirelessly to deflect suspicion. Rumors were planted about a possible mansion expansion. Generous donations were made to local pediatric hospitals, justifying the medical equipment deliveries. One night, almost 2 weeks after the babies arrived, Ethan found himself alone in the nursery. The nannies had been dismissed for a few hours, and he insisted on caring for the quadruplets himself. Sitting in the armchair with Gabriel asleep on his chest, Ethan reflected on the changes in his life. His impeccable suit had been replaced by a t-shirt stained with milk. His jam-packed schedule now revolved around feeding and nap times. "You've turned my world upside down, you know," he whispered, looking at the other three sleeping peacefully in their cribs, "and I couldn't be happier." At that moment, his phone vibrated. A message from Sarah. "Boss, I'm sorry." The story leaked. "The Daily News will publish tomorrow. Billionaire Ethan Blackwood, father of quadruplets." Ethan felt his chest tighten. The world was about to discover his secret. All the precautions, all the secrecy had come to an end. Looking at Gabriel, then the others, Ethan made a decision. It was time to face the world, not as the ruthless CEO, but as a proud father. Carefully, he typed a reply to Sarah. "Arrange a press conference for tomorrow. It's time for the world to meet the Blackwood family." Putting the phone aside, Ethan hugged Gabriel a little tighter. The challenges ahead would be immense, but he was ready. He was no longer alone. He had 4 perfect reasons to face any storm that came. "We're in this together, little ones," he murmured. "Daddy promises." And so, lulled by the soft sound of his children's breathing, Ethan Blackwood, the billionaire who became a father overnight, fell asleep, ready to present his new family to the world. The shrill cry of a baby pierced the early morning silence, jerking Ethan awake from an already light sleep. He rose automatically, eyes half closed, checking the time, 3:27 a.m. He sighed, recognizing Raphael's distinct cry, hunger. Over the past 2 months, Ethan Blackwood had become an expert at identifying his children's needs by the sound of their cries, a skill he never imagined he'd develop. Walking to the nursery, Ethan found Raphael upset, his face red from effort. With practiced moves, he picked the baby up, murmuring comforting words as he prepared the bottle with one hand. "Shh, it's okay, champ. Daddy's here," he whispered, testing the milk's temperature on his wrist before offering it to Raphael. While feeding his son, Ethan watched the other 3 still asleep. Gabriel, the oldest, slept with his arms raised above his head, as if celebrating some victory in his dreams. Miguel, the calmest, was curled into a ball, thumb firmly in mouth. Daniel, the youngest, slept on his tummy, his tiny back rising and falling in a steady rhythm. Ethan smiled, amazed. Each day brought new challenges, but also new discoveries about his children and himself. Caring for quadruplets was monumental. The first weeks were a blur of diapers, bottles, and sleepless nights. Ethan, accustomed to leading teams and closing multi-million-dollar deals, found himself completely out of his comfort zone. There were moments of pure panic, like when all 4 started crying simultaneously, and Ethan, alone in the nursery, felt utterly overwhelmed, or the first time Daniel had a fever, and Ethan spent the entire night by the crib, checking the temperature every half hour, terrified by every little whimper. But there were also moments of pure joy. Gabriel's first smile, directed right at Ethan during a diaper change. Miguel's contagious laughter when Ethan made funny faces. How Raphael calmed instantly at the sound of his father's voice, and Daniel's determination, lifting his tiny head during tummy time. Gradually, Ethan developed a routine. He woke up before dawn to enjoy a few peaceful moments with the babies before the support staff arrived. He spent the day juggling childcare and video conferences, often with a baby in his arms, out of the camera's view. Evenings were sacred. Ethan insisted on bathing all 4 himself, a ritual that initially terrified him. 4 slippery babies. A disaster waiting to happen, but became his favorite time of day. During bath time, he truly connected with each of them individually, watching their unique personalities emerge. Gabriel, the natural leader, always tried to swim in the tub, splashing water everywhere. Raphael, the observer, was fascinated by soap bubbles, trying to grab them with his chubby hands. Miguel loved the warm water, relaxing completely and often dozing off in the tub. Daniel, cautious at first, took time to get used to the water, but now gurgled happily. As days turned into weeks and weeks into months, Ethan noticed profound changes within himself. The ruthless executive known for his cold calculations now caught himself smiling for no reason, just recalling one of his children's antics. His priorities shifted dramatically. Board meetings, once dominating his schedule, now took a back seat to feeding times and naps. Ethan cancelled business trips, preferring to attend via video conference so as not to miss any moment with the quadruplets. His team at the company noticed the change. The once workaholic boss now ended meetings on time, eager to get home. His decisions, though still sharp, seemed to consider a longer horizon, as if constantly thinking about the future, not just of the company, but the world his children would inherit. One night, rocking Daniel to sleep after a nightmare, Ethan had an epiphany. Looking at his youngest son's now peaceful face, he realized he had found something money could never buy, a purpose greater than himself. "You've changed me," he whispered, looking at the 4 cribs. "I thought I knew everything about success, but you taught me what truly matters." At that moment, as if understanding, Daniel opened his sleepy eyes and smiled at his father before drifting back to sleep. Ethan felt his heart swell with love. He who once thought his greatest achievement would be his corporate empire, now knew the truth. His greatest successes were sleeping peacefully in their cribs. Gently placing Daniel back in his crib, Ethan made a silent promise to his children and himself. He would be the best father he could be, balancing the challenges of his professional life with the joys and responsibilities of his new family. Billionaire Ethan Blackwood had been transformed. And although the road ahead was still full of challenges, he would face it with 4 small reasons to become the best version of himself. Ethan watched the quadruplets playing on the rug in the living room, their little bodies rolling and twisting as they clumsily tried to crawl. 6 months had passed since that life-changing Christmas Eve. 6 months of joy, challenges, and a happiness he never knew was possible. But as the babies grew, questions Ethan had tried to suppress began surfacing more frequently in his mind. Who had Claire really been? What had she done during those months of pregnancy? And why had she chosen to keep everything secret until the end? With a sigh, Ethan picked up his laptop. The babies were safe under the nanny's watchful eyes, and he had a mission. It was time to uncover the truth about the mother of his children. "Sarah," he called through the intercom, "I need you to conduct a discreet investigation about Claire Laurent." Hours later, Ethan found himself immersed in a pile of documents and reports. The story that emerged was as fascinating as it was painful. Claire, he discovered, had been a brilliant scientist specializing in rare diseases. After leaving Zurich, she devoted herself to groundbreaking research, working tirelessly even as her pregnancy advanced. One email in particular caught Ethan's attention. It was from Claire to her research mentor, dated 3 months after their time together. "Dr. Simmons, I know you must be disappointed in my decision to leave the program, but understand this may be my only chance to leave a true legacy, not just through my research, but through these 4 lives I carry. Time is short, but I'll do my best to finish my work before it's too late. Claire." Ethan felt a lump in his throat. Claire knew from the start that her time was limited, yet she chose to give life to the babies, sacrificing her own chances of treatment. Continuing his investigation, Ethan discovered Claire had isolated herself in a small coastal town during most of the pregnancy. Medical records showed frequent appointments, revealing her silent struggle against the cancer while caring for the baby's health. A photo made Ethan's heart skip a beat. It was Claire, clearly at the end of her pregnancy, sitting on a deserted beach. Her face was thinner than he remembered, but her eyes shone with fierce determination as she cradled her round belly. The date on the back was just 2 weeks before the quadruplets' birth. Silent tears rolled down Ethan's cheeks. Claire's courage, her strength in facing such a cruel fate, left him in awe and heartbreak. But as he dug deeper into Claire's past, Ethan found himself confronting his own secrets and choices. Why had he, a man with limitless resources, never searched more intensely for her after her disappearance? Why had he so easily accepted the silence? The painful truth was that part of him had felt relieved when Claire left, relieved not to face the possibility of a real commitment, of giving his heart completely to someone. "What kind of man does that make me?" he murmured to himself, looking at the babies now sleeping peacefully on the rug. These tiny beings were the result of the love he tried to deny. A soft cry broke his thoughts. Daniel, the smallest, had woken and was looking at Ethan with eyes identical to his own. Without hesitation, Ethan picked him up, cradling him gently. "You know, little one," he whispered, "your mother was the bravest person I've ever known. And me, I was a coward." Daniel stared back, curious eyes as if understanding every word. "But I promise you, your brother's and your mother's memory, I will be better. You deserve that." In that moment, Ethan made a decision. He couldn't change the past, undo his omissions, or bring Claire back, but he could honor her memory and her sacrifice. In the following days, Ethan launched a new mission. Using his resources and connections, he tracked down Claire's unfinished research. He discovered she was close to a significant breakthrough in treating the rare disease that afflicted her. With renewed determination, Ethan redirected an entire research team from his company to continue Claire's work. It wasn't just about completing her research, it was about giving meaning to her sacrifice, about creating a legacy his children could be proud of. At the same time, Ethan began collecting memories, photos, and stories about Claire. He created a special book for each of the quadruplets, filled with details about their courageous mother. He wanted Gabriel, Raphael, Miguel, and Daniel to know not only Claire's sacrifice, but her passion, intelligence, and immense love for them. One night, as he put the babies to bed, Ethan found himself telling them about Claire, about how they met, about the sparkle in her eyes when she talked about science, about how she changed his life in just 1 week. "Your mother," he said softly, "was the most incredible person I've ever met, and you, my little ones, are the greatest gift she could have given me." Looking at their sleepy faces, Ethan felt a mix of gratitude and determination. Gratitude to Claire for her love and sacrifice, and determination to be the father his children deserved, to honor Claire's legacy, and to create a bright future for this unexpected and precious family. Shadows of the past still lingered, memories of choices and secrets, but now, illuminated by the love of 4 tiny smiles, those shadows seemed less frightening. Ethan knew the road ahead would be full of challenges, but for the first time in his life, he felt truly ready to face them. With one last glance at the cribs, Ethan made a silent promise to Claire and himself. He would live each day honoring the love that united them, however briefly, and the miracle that love created. Ethan Blackwood's office, once a sanctuary of business and power, now resembled a luxury daycare. Toys scattered across the marble floor, a discreet changing station set up in the corner, and 4 portable cribs placed strategically out of the camera's view during video conferences. It was 3 a.m., and Ethan rocked Miguel gently in his arms while reviewing contracts on his tablet. The little one had woken with colic, and Ethan discovered that constant motion soothed him. Across the room, Gabriel, Raphael, and Daniel slept peacefully. "Almost there, champ," Ethan murmured, planting a kiss on his son's forehead. "Just a few more paragraphs and we can get some sleep." The past months had been a roller coaster of emotions and challenges. Each day brought new discoveries, both about the babies and himself. The first conscious smile came from Raphael during a particularly challenging diaper change. Ethan was covered in, well, better not remember, when the little one looked at him and flashed a toothless grin that instantly melted Ethan's heart. Gabriel was the first to roll over, surprising everyone during tummy time. One moment he was on his belly, frustrated, and the next he had flipped over, looking as surprised as everyone else by his new perspective on the world. Miguel, ever the observer, was the first to babble something suspiciously like "dada." Ethan spent days trying to make him repeat it, to the amusement of the nannies, and Daniel, the smallest and most determined, shocked everyone by being the first to sit up on his own, his little face scrunched in concentration as he maintained his balance. Each milestone was celebrated with the intensity Ethan once reserved for closing massive business deals. Photos were taken, videos recorded, and Ethan found himself sharing the baby's achievements with anyone who would listen, from Sarah to the night guard. But keeping 4 growing babies secret was a monumental challenge. Ethan had become a master of juggling and discretion. Board meetings were often interrupted by distant cries, which Ethan skillfully disguised as technical issues. Business trips were minimized, and when unavoidable, he made nightly video calls where he read stories to the quadruplets. not caring about the puzzled looks of his associates as they watched him make funny voices to an apparently empty room. The mansion underwent subtle but significant transformations. The home theater became a sensory stimulation room. The wine cellar was converted into a giant pantry for formula and baby food, and Ethan's office had become the heart of the operation, a hybrid between a corporate command center and a luxury nursery. But the deepest transformation was within Ethan himself. The relentless executive, known for his cool-headed decisions, now considered the long-term impact of every choice. What kind of world am I building for my children? Became his guiding question in every negotiation. His priorities changed drastically. Meetings were rescheduled to accommodate pediatric appointments. Presentations were prepared with a baby or two in his lap. And for the first time in his life, Ethan discovered there were things more important than the next big deal. One evening, after a particularly challenging video conference with international investors, during which Daniel decided it was the perfect time to attempt crawling, nearly entering the camera's field of view, Ethan found himself reflecting on the past year. Sitting on his office floor, surrounded by his 4 little miracles now asleep, he picked up his journal, a habit he'd acquired to document every precious moment with the babies. 1 year, he wrote, his normally impeccable handwriting slightly shaky from exhaustion. 1 year since you turned my world upside down. 1 year of secrets, challenges, and more love than I ever thought possible. He looked at each baby, his heart overflowing with emotion. Gabriel, my natural leader. Today you took your first steps, determined to reach the teddy bear I purposely placed out of your reach. Your persistence reminds me so much of myself, but I hope you grow with more balance than I had. Raphael, my thinker. Your curious eyes take in everything around you. Today you spent hours fascinated by a kaleidoscope, and I found myself wondering about the wonders you'll see and create in the future. Miguel, my artist. Your masterpieces in carrot puree now decorate the fridge. Your creativity challenges me to see the world from new perspectives every day. And Daniel, my resilient one. The smallest, but by far the most determined. Your journey has been the most challenging, with extra medical appointments and worries, but your strength inspires me daily. Ethan paused, wiping away a stubborn tear. This year has been a lesson in humility. I, who always thought I had all the answers, find myself constantly seeking guidance from books, experts, even the nannies. Fatherhood has shown me a type of vulnerability I've never experienced. Keeping you a secret has been challenging, and sometimes I wonder if I'm doing the right thing. Part of me wants to shout from the rooftops how much I love you, how amazing you are. But another part, the protective part born the moment I saw you, wants to keep you safe from this crazy world for as long as possible. Claire, he wrote, his heart aching at the thought of the mother of his children. I hope, wherever you are, you're proud. I'm doing my best to honor your sacrifice, to be the father these boys deserve. Ethan closed the journal, feeling the weight of the past year and the responsibility of the years to come. He knew he couldn't keep the quadruplets a secret forever. The world would eventually find out, and he needed to be prepared. But for now, in this quiet moment of the early morning, with the soft sound of his children's breathing filling the air, Ethan allowed himself to simply be. To be a father, a protector, loved unconditionally by 4 tiny hearts. Billionaire Ethan Blackwood, once defined by his corporate empire, now found his true identity in the smiles, tears, and cuddles of Gabriel, Raphael, Miguel, and Daniel. And as the sun began to rise, marking the start of another day in this secret journey, Ethan knew he wouldn't trade this life for anything. The first year had passed, filled with challenges, joys, and transformations. What the future held was uncertain, but one thing Ethan knew for sure. With his 4 little miracles at his side, he was ready to face anything. The alarm's shrill ring pulled Ethan from a light sleep. 5:30 a.m. With a groan he stood, muscles protesting after another night in the nursery's armchair. 15 months had passed since the quadruplets' arrival, and the secrecy was beginning to take its toll. Ethan tiptoed silently through the room, checking each baby. Gabriel and Raphael slept peacefully. Miguel muttered something in his sleep, and Daniel, as always, opened his eyes at the sound of his father's steps, yawning before drifting back to sleep. Smiling wearily, Ethan headed to his room to prepare for another day of juggling his corporate life with his secret life as a dad. At the office, suspicions were growing. Joyce, the senior vice president, gave Ethan a probing look during the morning meeting. "Ethan, you look different," she commented, studying him closely. "Everything all right? You've cancelled so many trips lately." Ethan forced a smile, adjusting his tie to hide a baby food stain he hadn't noticed. "Just reevaluating priorities, Joyce. Sometimes staying home can be more productive." She didn't seem convinced, but before she could press further, Ethan's phone vibrated. It was Sarah, his assistant. "Boss, emergency at home. Daniel has a fever." Ethan's heart sped up. "Excuse me," he said, standing abruptly. "I have an urgent matter to handle." As he rushed out, he didn't notice the significant look Joyce and the other board members exchanged. At home, Ethan found Daniel burning with fever in the nanny's arms. The next few hours were a blur of thermometers, medicine, and calls to the pediatrician. When the fever finally broke, Ethan realized he'd missed 3 important calls and a crucial video conference. Mr. Blackwood, Marie, the head nanny, approached him gently. "Perhaps it's time to consider telling the truth. Keeping this secret is getting harder and harder." Ethan sighed, running a hand through his disheveled hair. "I know, Marie, but not yet. I need more time." The following days were a dangerous dance between his 2 lives. Ethan struggled to make up for lost work hours while trying to stay present for the quadruplets. One particularly chaotic afternoon, Ethan was in the middle of a crucial video call when he heard a suspicious noise from the other side of his office. To his horror, he saw Raphael crawling dangerously close to the camera's field of view. In a swift move, Ethan accidentally knocked over his coffee mug, spilling it on the keyboard and creating a technical malfunction that gave him just enough time to rescue Raphael unseen. "Sorry for the interruption," he said, out of breath, upon returning to the call. "Technical issues." But suspicions kept mounting. During a business dinner, his old friend and partner, Michael, confronted him directly. "Ethan, what's going on? You're different, cancelling commitments, always rushing home. There are rumors." Ethan felt his stomach drop. "Rumors?" Michael lowered his voice. "Some think you're sick. Others, well, they speculate about a secret lover." Ethan almost laughed at the irony. If they only knew. "Michael, Before he could come up with an excuse, his phone rang. It was the nanny on duty. "Mr. Blackwood, sorry to bother you, but Gabriel is calling for you and we can't calm him down." Ethan's heart sank. His child needed him. "I'm sorry, Michael. I have to go." Leaving a perplexed Michael behind, Ethan rushed home to find Gabriel sobbing inconsolably. "Dada," the little boy whimpered, reaching out his arms as soon as he saw Ethan. In that moment, holding his son, Ethan felt the weight of his secret more than ever. How much longer could he continue like this? The breaking point came a few weeks later. Ethan was in a critical shareholders meeting when he received an urgent text from Sarah. "Home emergency. All 4 are sick. Pediatrician on the way." Ethan went pale, his mind in panic. 4 sick babies, alone, needing him. Without a second thought, he stood up in the middle of the presentation. "Ladies and gentlemen, I apologize, but I have a family emergency." The room erupted in confused murmurs. A family emergency. Ethan Blackwood, the notorious bachelor. Joyce followed him to the elevator. "Ethan, what's happening? You've been acting strange for months. We're a team, remember? Let us help." For a moment, Ethan considered telling her everything. The weight of the secret was crushing, but fear of exposing his children to public scrutiny made him hold back. "Thank you, Joyce, but it's complicated. I promise I'll explain everything soon." At home, Ethan found chaos. 4 feverish babies, vomiting and crying. Dr. Chen looked exhausted. "Mr. Blackwood, they'll be fine. It's just a virus. But they'll need constant care in the coming days." Ethan nodded, holding Miguel and Daniel in his arms while the nannies tended to Gabriel and Raphael. "Thank you, doctor. I'll stay with them." The next 72 hours tested his endurance. Ethan cancelled all commitments, ignored calls and emails, focusing entirely on his children. He changed diapers, cleaned up vomit, administered medication, and offered comfort tirelessly. On the third day, with the quadruplets finally improving, Ethan collapsed onto the sofa. His phone, ignored for days, vibrated non-stop. Messages of concern, speculation, and even threats of an emergency board meeting piled up. Looking at his 4 miracles, now peacefully sleeping after days of misery, Ethan made a decision. He could no longer live this double life. It was time for the truth. With trembling hands, he picked up the phone and called Sarah. "Sarah, arrange a press conference. It's time for the world to meet the Blackwood heirs." Hanging up, Ethan felt both fear and relief. The secrecy had ended. Whatever came next was uncertain, but one thing he knew: he would face it with 4 perfect reasons by his side. As he prepared for the inevitable storm, Ethan looked at his children and smiled. The world was about to change, but the love he felt for them remained constant. "We're in this together, little ones," he whispered. "Daddy promises." And so, heart-pounding but determined, Ethan Blackwood prepared to reveal his most precious secret to the world. The Blackwood mansion, normally a fortress of tranquility and discretion, was buzzing with activity. Colorful balloons adorned the grand hall, banners reading "Happy First Birthday" hung strategically, and a table piled with carefully wrapped presents occupied a corner of the room. At the center, 4 tiny baby thrones awaited their royal occupants. Ethan Blackwood, impeccable in his tailored suit but with a suspicious banana puree stain on his sleeve, rushed back and forth, checking every detail of the celebration. It was the quadruplets' first birthday, and he was determined to make it unforgettable, even if the only guests were the staff who had helped keep the secret so long. "Mr. Blackwood," called Marie, the head nanny, smiling gently. "The boys are ready." Ethan's heart raced. 1 year, 365 days of unconditional love, sleepless nights, rushed diaper changes, toothless smiles, and wonderful discoveries. How time had flown. Gabriel, Raphael, Miguel, and Daniel entered the hall in the nanny's arms, all dressed in tiny suits matching Ethan's. The sight brought tears to his eyes. "My little gentleman," Ethan murmured, approaching to kiss each chubby cheek. "Happy birthday." The celebration that followed was a whirlwind of precious moments. Gabriel, always the leader, was the first to dip his hands into the cake, triggering a chain reaction among his brothers. Raphael watched everything with curious eyes, while Miguel attempted to redecorate his throne with frosting. Daniel, the smallest, savored every crumb with the concentration of a food critic. Ethan observed it all, his heart overflowing with love and gratitude. Between taking photos, wiping messy faces, and unwrapping presents, he found himself reflecting on the past year. He remembered the first night, the panic he felt being alone with 4 newborns, how his hands trembled during his first diaper change, afraid of hurting those fragile little beings. The fear that consumed him at the first fever, the indescribable joy of the first smile, the overwhelming emotion at hearing Dada for the first time, every challenge, every moment of doubt, every sleepless night, it had all been worth it. Ethan Blackwood, the once ruthless businessman, had been transformed. A man who once measured success in dollars and shares now measured it in smiles and hugs. Helping Daniel open a particularly stubborn gift, Ethan found himself thinking of Claire. What would she say if she could see their children now? Would she be proud of the father he'd become? "Thank you," he whispered to the air, hoping somehow Claire could hear him. "Thank you for giving me the greatest gift of all." Afternoon wore on, and gradually the quadruplets began showing signs of fatigue. Ethan took them to the nursery, now decorated with photos from their first year and souvenirs of each milestone reached. Sitting in the large armchair, with Gabriel and Raphael snuggled against his chest and Miguel and Daniel in the nanny's arms, Ethan began to sing a lullaby. It was the same melody his mother had sung to him as a child, a memory that resurfaced unexpectedly in the first weeks of fatherhood. As the little ones drifted off to sleep, Ethan felt a wave of emotion wash over him. Love, gratitude, but also guilt. Guilt for keeping these 4 miracles hidden from the world. Guilt for denying them the chance of a normal life, with friends, extended family, experiences beyond the mansion's walls. It was at that moment, watching his children's sleeping faces, that Ethan made a decision. It was time to share his secret, at least with someone he fully trusted. Hours later, with the quadruplets safe in their cribs and the mansion quiet, Ethan went to his office. With trembling hands, he picked up the phone and dialed a familiar number. 3 rings later, a familiar voice answered. "Ethan, is that you? Everything okay? It's so late." Ethan took a deep breath. "Michael, my friend, I'm sorry for calling at this hour, but I need to tell you something important." Michael, his longtime friend and business partner, was the person Ethan trusted most in the world, besides Claire. "Of course, Ethan, I'm listening. What's going on?" Ethan hesitated a moment, then the words began to flow. "Michael, do you remember that conference in Zurich? Almost 2 years ago? Well, something happened there. Something that changed my life forever." Over the next few minutes, Ethan poured out everything. The meeting with Claire, their passionate week, her disappearance, and then the Christmas Eve that transformed his world. "Quadruplets!" Michael exclaimed, incredulous. "Ethan, you're telling me you've had quadruplets for a year and kept it secret all this time?" "I know. It's crazy," Ethan replied, running a hand through his hair. "But Michael, they're everything to me. I wanted to protect them, keep them safe from public scrutiny, but now you realize you can't hide them forever," Michael finished gently. "Exactly," Ethan sighed. Today was their first birthday. Gabriel, Raphael, Miguel, and Daniel. They're incredible. Michael, so small but already with such distinct personalities, and I don't know what to do. How to tell the world, how to protect them when the truth comes out. There was a moment of silence on the other end of the line. Then Michael spoke, his voice full of emotion. "Ethan, my friend, I'm proud of you. What you've done, caring for these babies alone, keeping your company running, all in secret, it's extraordinary. But you're right, you can't keep going like this." Ethan felt a weight lift from his shoulders. Sharing his secret, even with just one person, made an enormous difference. "What do I do now, Michael?" "Now," Michael said with determination, "we plan. We'll find a way to introduce your children to the world on your own terms. Protect them, yes, but also give them the chance to live fully." Ethan felt tears in his eyes. "Thank you, Michael. I don't know what I'd do without you." "Hey, what are godfathers for, right?" Michael teased, making Ethan laugh for the first time in days. When he hung up the phone, Ethan felt lighter than he had in months. The path ahead was still uncertain, but now he wasn't alone in this journey. Climbing the stairs to the nursery, Ethan paused to watch his sleeping sons. Gabriel, forever the leader even in sleep. Raphael, clutching his favorite book. Miguel, sprawled like a starfish. And Daniel, the smallest, curled into a little ball. "Happy birthday, my loves," Ethan whispered. "Daddy promises this next year will be even better. We'll be together, as a family, facing the whole world." With his heart full of love and hope renewed, Ethan Blackwood allowed himself to dream of the future. A future where his 4 little miracles could shine, not just within the mansion walls, but for the whole world to see. The first year had been a journey of discoveries, challenges, and unconditional love. The next, well, it would be the start of a new adventure, and this time, Ethan was ready to face it head-on, 4 tiny hands in his, and the unwavering support of a family united by love and Claire's legacy. It was a quiet Sunday afternoon at the Blackwood mansion. Ethan played with the quadruplets in the garden, enjoying the rare peaceful moments he managed to find between his responsibilities as a father and a CEO. Gabriel and Raphael competed to see who could stack more blocks, while Miguel drew abstract shapes with colored chalk on the patio floor. Daniel, as always, clung to his father, watching everything with curious eyes. The doorbell rang, making Ethan frown. He wasn't expecting visitors, and very few people had access to the property. "Sarah," he called, but his assistant was already heading to the door, just as intrigued as he was. Moments later, Sarah returned, her face pale. "Mr. Blackwood, there's a woman here. She says she's Claire's sister." Ethan's world seemed to freeze. Claire's sister. But Claire never mentioned having a sister. "Take care of the children," he murmured to Sarah, standing up with Daniel in his arms. He walked to the entrance, his heart pounding in his chest. There in the foyer stood a woman who could have been Claire's ghost. The same almond-shaped eyes, the same wavy brown hair. But where Claire had been all warmth, this woman radiated fierce determination. "Ethan Blackwood," she said, her voice trembling slightly. "I'm Olivia Laurent, Claire's sister." Ethan felt Daniel squirm in his arms, sensing the tension. Claire never mentioned having a sister." A flash of pain crossed Olivia's face. "No, I suppose she didn't. We were estranged for years, but that doesn't matter now. I'm here for her children. My nephews." Instinctively, Ethan held Daniel closer. How did you find out about them?" Olivia took a step forward, eyes fixed on Daniel. "Claire came to me in her final days. She told me everything, about you, about the babies, and about her last wish." Ethan's stomach dropped. "Last wish? That I take care of them," Olivia said, voice now firm. "Claire wanted them raised by family, by someone who understands our legacy, our traditions." Ethan felt as if he'd been punched. Claire wanted someone else to raise their children, after all they'd been through. "I'm sorry, Ms. Laurent, but I can't just hand over my children to a stranger. They're my life, my responsibility." Olivia glared at him, her eyes burning with anger and determination. "You didn't even know they existed until Claire left them at your door. I'm family. I have legal rights." The tension in the air was palpable. Daniel began to cry, frightened by the raised voices. Outside, Ethan could hear the other babies growing agitated. "Please," Ethan said, struggling to remain calm, "let's talk about this civilly, for the sake of the children." Olivia hesitated for a moment, then nodded stiffly. "Fine, but I'm not leaving here without my nephews." The following hours were an emotional roller coaster. Seated in Ethan's study, with the quadruplets safe in the nursery under Sarah's and the nanny's care, Ethan and Olivia untangled the complex web of secrets Claire had woven. Olivia revealed that she and Claire had drifted apart years ago due to a family dispute. Their family, she explained, was the guardian of a long scientific legacy passed down through generations. Claire had rebelled against these family expectations, choosing her own path in medical research. But in the end, Olivia said, her voice breaking, she came home. When she discovered the pregnancy and the illness, Claire sought me out. We spent her last months together, reconciling. Ethan listened, stunned. How could Claire have kept so many secrets? Why hadn't she trusted him? "She loved you, Ethan," Olivia continued, surprising him. "She talked about you all the time, but she was afraid that your public life, the empire you built, would overshadow the extraordinary potential she saw in the babies." Ethan felt tears in his eyes. "I've changed, Olivia. From the moment I saw them, my life gained a new purpose. They are everything to me." Olivia studied him for a long moment. "I see that, but understand these babies are not just your children or my nephews. They're the last descendants of a lineage of brilliant scientists and thinkers. Claire wanted them to have the chance to continue this legacy." The conversation stretched into the night. Ethan shared stories from the first year with the quadruplets, showing Olivia photos and videos. She, in turn, revealed more about Claire's past, filling in the gaps that had haunted Ethan. As the night wore on, the initial hostility began to fade, replaced by mutual understanding. Both loved Claire. Both wanted the best for the children. Around midnight, exhausted physically and emotionally, they reached an impasse. "Olivia," Ethan said softly, "I understand your connection to the babies. I understand Claire's wish to preserve your family's legacy. But these boys, they're my life. I won't give them up." Olivia looked at him, tears shining in her eyes. "And I can't simply ignore my sister's last request." At that moment, a soft cry echoed through the baby monitor. Daniel, always the most sensitive, had woken up. Without thinking, Ethan got up to go to him, then paused at the door. "Come with me," he said to Olivia. In the nursery, they found Daniel standing in his crib, arms raised toward Ethan. Without hesitation, Ethan picked him up, whispering comforting words. Next to him, Olivia watched, fascinated. "Want to hold him?" Ethan offered. With trembling hands, Olivia took Daniel. The baby studied her for a moment with curious eyes, then smiled, that bright smile so much like Claire's. Something changed in that instant. Olivia looked at Ethan, then back at Daniel, and then at the other baby sleeping peacefully. "They belong with you," she whispered. "Claire was wrong. You're exactly what they need." Ethan felt a lump in his throat. "Olivia, I don't want to deprive them of their family, their legacy. What if we work together? You can be part of their lives. We can honor Claire's memory and your family's legacy, while also giving them the freedom to choose their own paths." Olivia hesitated for a moment, then nodded, tears rolling down her cheeks. "I'd like that. Very much." That night, as moonlight bathed the nursery in a soft glow, Ethan and Olivia sealed a silent pact. United by Claire's love and the future of the Quadruplets, they committed to creating a new kind of family. Ethan knew the path ahead would still hold challenges, legal issues to resolve, explanations to give the world. But looking at his children sleeping peacefully, with Olivia at his side, he felt a peace he hadn't experienced since the babies arrived. Claire, wherever she was, must be smiling. Her final wish, in the end, had united two parts of her life into a new and unexpected family. And so, in the quiet of that night, a new chapter began for the Blackwood-Laurent family. A chapter of reconciliation, new beginnings, and above all, unconditional love. The soft morning light filtered through the curtains of Ethan's office, where he and Olivia remained seated, exhausted but unable to end a conversation that had lasted all night. Cold cups of coffee lay forgotten on the table, silent witnesses to hours of revelations and intense emotions. Ethan observed Olivia, noticing the similarities to Claire that went beyond physical features. The same determined gleam in her eyes, the same habit of biting her lip when deep in thought. It was as if a piece of Claire lived on in her. "Tell me more about her," Ethan asked gently. "The Claire you knew before me." Olivia smiled, bittersweet with memories. Claire was always the family rebel. Brilliant, of course, all Lawrence are, but always questioning, always challenging the status quo. She paused, lost in thought. "Our family has a long lineage of renowned scientists, generations dedicated to research and knowledge. There were expectations for Claire." "For both of us, really?" Ethan nodded, beginning to understand the weight Claire carried, and she didn't want to follow that predetermined path. "Exactly," Olivia confirmed. "While I embraced our family traditions, Claire wanted more. She saw science not just as a pursuit of knowledge, but as a way to directly help people. That's why she chose medical research." The pieces of the puzzle that was Claire were falling into place in Ethan's mind. Her passion for making a difference, her desire to revolutionize rare disease treatments. It all had deeper roots than he'd imagined. "Our last big fight," Olivia continued, voice trembling, "was when Claire decided to leave the family's lab to work for a pharmaceutical company. She said she wanted to see her research turn into real treatments, saving lives. I accused her of betraying our legacy." Tears shone in Olivia's eyes. Moved by unexpected empathy, Ethan reached out, gently touching her arm. "You reconciled in the end," he said softly. "It wasn't a question." Olivia nodded, wiping a tear. "When she discovered the pregnancy and the illness, Claire came home. Those were intense months, Ethan. We worked day and night, searching for a cure, something to buy her more time." Ethan felt a knot in his throat. "She never told me. Why didn't she come to me?" Olivia met his gaze with compassion. "Claire loved you, Ethan, deeply. But she was also afraid that your public life, the empire you built, might overshadow the extraordinary potential she saw in the babies. She wanted to protect them," Ethan murmured, finally understanding. "Yes, but not just that," Olivia explained. Claire believed these babies, the combination of the Laurent brilliance and your entrepreneurial vision, Ethan, could be the key to revolutionary scientific breakthroughs. She dreamed of a future where they would continue her work, maybe even finding the cure she couldn't. Silence fell between them, heavy with the weight of these revelations. Ethan stood, walking to the window. Outside, the world was waking up, unaware of the drama unfolding inside the mansion. "You know," he said finally, "when the quadruplets arrived, I was terrified. No idea how to be a father, let alone to 4 babies at once. But something changed in me that night, Olivia. For the first time in my life, I had something more important than business, more valuable than any amount of money." He turned, facing Olivia with tearful eyes. "These boys, they are my entire world now. Every decision I make, every deal I close, I do thinking of their future, not just their financial legacy, but the world I'm helping shape for them." Olivia stood, moving closer. "I see it now. The way you talk about them, how your eyes shine. Claire would be proud, Ethan. You're exactly the father she hoped you'd be." At that moment, as if summoned, a baby's cry echoed through the monitor. Gabriel, always the leader. "Want to meet them properly?" Ethan asked. In the nursery, they found Gabriel standing in his crib, his face lighting up as soon as he saw Ethan. The other 3 still slept peacefully. Ethan picked Gabriel up, then turned to Olivia. "This is Gabriel, the oldest by 2 minutes," he said with a smile. "Want to hold him?" With trembling hands, Olivia took the baby. Gabriel studied her with curious eyes, then smiled, reaching out a tiny hand to touch her face. "Hello, little one," Olivia whispered, voice thick with emotion. "I'm your Aunt Olivia." In the following minutes, as the other babies woke, Ethan introduced each one, sharing their little stories and quirks. Raphael, ever observant, studied Olivia closely before offering one of his rare smiles. Miguel immediately reached for her, always social. And Daniel, the smallest, surprised everyone by snuggling comfortably in Olivia's arms, as if recognizing a piece of Claire in her. Watching Olivia interact with the quadruplets, Ethan felt a wave of certainty wash over him. This was right. This was what Claire would have wanted. "Olivia," he said gently, "I know we started this conversation with you demanding custody, but now I think there's a better solution." Olivia looked up, still holding Daniel in her arms. "These boys need a family," Ethan continued. "They need their father, but they also need to know their legacy, their history. They need an aunt who can tell them stories about their mother, who can guide them in the scientific world Claire loved so much." He paused, gathering courage. "Olivia, would you like to be part of their lives? Not as a distant guardian, but as a constant presence, a loving aunt, a living connection to Claire and the Laurent legacy." Tears flowed freely down Olivia's face now. "Ethan, Yes, of course." In that moment, bathed in the golden morning light, a new family was formed. Not conventional, not what anyone had planned, but perfect in its own way. Ethan and Olivia spent the following hours outlining how this new dynamic would work. Olivia would move closer, actively participating in the boys' education, especially in scientific matters. Together, they would keep Claire's memory alive, honoring her legacy through their love and care. "We have a long road ahead," Ethan said, watching the quadruplets now happily playing on the nursery rug. "There will be challenges, I'm sure, but together we can give these boys the best of both worlds." Olivia nodded, a genuine smile lighting her face for the first time since she arrived. Claire always said that true scientific discovery comes when we dare to think outside the box. I think we're about to make our own revolutionary discovery, how to create an extraordinary family. As the day advanced, bringing the promise of a new beginning, Ethan felt a peace he hadn't felt since the babies arrived. The future was still uncertain, but now there was hope, understanding, and above all, a family united by Claire's love and the infinite potential of 4 little miracles. December's sunlight bathed the Blackwood mansion in golden light, reflecting off the festive decorations adorning the grand hall. Colorful balloons danced in the air, shimmering ribbons draped the walls, and at the center a huge banner read, Happy second birthday, Gabriel, Raphael, Miguel, and Daniel. Ethan Blackwood, impeccable in his suit, but with a slightly crooked bow tie, courtesy of small and curious hands, observed the scene with a mix of pride and disbelief. 2 years. 2 years since 4 little miracles arrived at his door, turning his world upside down in the best possible way. Beside him, Olivia Laurent adjusted a party hat on Daniel's head, laughing as the little boy immediately tried to pull it off. The past month since Olivia's unexpected arrival had been a journey of adaptation, understanding, and surprisingly, healing for everyone. Ethan, called Michael, his best friend and now the Quadruplets' official godfather, cutting through the party buzz. Guests are arriving. Ready? Ethan took a deep breath, nodding. This wasn't just a birthday celebration. It was the official debut of the Blackwood heirs to the world. As guests, an eclectic mix of close friends, trusted colleagues, and key community figures arrived. Ethan and Olivia proudly introduced the Quadruplets. Gabriel, the born leader, charmed everyone with his early charisma. Raphael observed it all with curious eyes, asking surprisingly articulate questions for his age. Miguel, the family artist, had already gifted several guests with his crayon masterpieces, and Daniel, the smallest but most determined, stuck close to Ethan's side, occasionally hiding behind his legs when the attention became overwhelming. As the party continued, Ethan found himself reflecting on the incredible journey of the past 2 years. He remembered the panic of that first night, the fear of not being the father the boys deserved. Now, watching his children flourish, laughing and playing, he felt a wave of gratitude and fulfillment. Olivia's arrival, initially tumultuous, had proven a blessing in disguise. She brought not only a connection to Claire, but also a unique perspective that perfectly complemented Ethan's. Together, they created an environment where the Quadruplets could explore both the world of business and science, honoring both sides of their legacy. "A penny for your thoughts," Olivia said softly, approaching Ethan with 2 glasses of champagne. Ethan smiled, accepting the drink. "Just thinking about how unpredictable life is. 2 years ago, I was a lonely workaholic. Now I have a family. An unconventional family, but perfect in its own way." Olivia nodded, her eyes shining with emotion. "Claire would be so proud, Ethan. Of you, of the boys, of all of us." The sound of cutlery tapping on glass drew everyone's attention. Michael stood, ready to make a toast. "To Ethan Blackwood," he began, "a man who proved that true success isn't measured in dollars or shares, but in the love and dedication to family. And to the 4 young gentlemen of honor, Gabriel, Tamis, Raphael, Miguel, and Daniel, who remind us every day of the transformative power of love. May your future be as bright as the smiles lighting up this room." Applause filled the hall, mixed with the joyful cries of the Quadruplets, who, although not fully understanding, sensed the special occasion. As the evening wore on and guests began to leave, Ethan gathered the boys for a quiet moment. Sitting in the big armchair in the nursery, with the 4 nestled around him and Olivia nearby, he began telling them a story that had become a nightly ritual. "Once upon a time," Ethan began, voice soft and full of emotion, "there was a brilliant scientist named Claire. She had a heart as big as her mind, and she dreamed of making the world a better place." As Ethan told the story, painting a vivid portrait of Claire, her love of science, her extraordinary courage, the way she changed everyone's lives, Olivia occasionally added details, sharing childhood memories and anecdotes that made the boys laugh. Gabriel, Raphael, Miguel, and Daniel listened attentively, their eyes shining as they learned about the mother they never met, but whose love surrounded them every day. "And you know," Ethan concluded, looking at each of his sons, "your mother left us the greatest gift of all, you 4. 4 little miracles who remind us of the power of love and science." Tears rolled silently down Olivia's cheeks, and Ethan felt his own eyes well up. They were tears of gratitude, joy, and hope for the future. That night, long after the boys had fallen asleep, Ethan remained in the nursery, watching over his children. He replayed the journey of the past 2 years like a film in his mind, the challenges, the discoveries, the doubts, and the pure joys. He thought of Claire, how their brief encounter had changed the course of so many lives, He thought of Olivia, and how a potential adversary became a beloved ally and aunt. He thought of his sons, each unique and special, carrying within them the potential to change the world. Love, Ethan realized, had the power to create families in the most unexpected forms. It wasn't blood or traditional bonds that defined a family, but love, dedication, and mutual commitment. With one last look at the sleeping quadruplets, Ethan made a silent promise. He would continue to honor Claire's legacy, nurture his children's extraordinary potential, and, above all, love this unique and precious family fate had given him. The future, with all its challenges and possibilities, awaited. And Ethan Blackwood, once a solitary businessman, now a father of quadruplets and head of an unconventional family, was more than ready to face it. With 4 small hands in his and the unwavering support of a family united by love and Claire's legacy.